Well, imagine 10 years ago, there were retailers arguing that e-commerce was a distraction from the core retail business, right? And look at it now. Seems kind of crazy to think that that was a debate happening, 10 or more years ago. One of the big reasons why e-commerce was developed in a silo and actually created a lot of friction, um, kind of in the pre-omnichannel era. So it sounds like the conversation's repeating itself with BOPIS. Again, we talked about the fact that it's a service that's become commoditized. Um, and that alone should be quite weighty in terms of the consideration. Um, but the reality is, yeah, if BOPIS isn't set up correctly, there is absolutely a risk that it will negatively impact the in-store experience for the walk-in consumers. That is a reality and that is a risk, but it's certainly a surmountable risk, or fear. Um, you know, Understanding that BOPIS will take practice, it'll take commitment, it'll take a lot of calibration and tweaking. If you know that from the outset, then I think you can go into this with the perspective of, yes, there's going to be some bumps and bruises along the way, but if we understand that by working at this, we'll get over that, then that hopefully creates the conviction to take that first step. Again, not needing to have all the answers up front, but knowing that you'll get to the answers through calibrating the model. Ultimately, the store associate is responsible for all consumers, right? And the reality is, internally we draw such a fine line between this is the consumer that walks in the store and this is the consumer that shops online. They're very often the same consumer, right? So if you're saying, hey, if I'm servicing this online consumer with BOPIS and my store associates are being distracted to do that, and they're not able to service the walk-in consumer, um, again, it's a very siloed view of it. The consumer is the same, right? So we need to think about how we're setting up, fundamentally, um, KPIs and compensation models for associates that reflect this, right? That's kind of the foundational piece that needs to go in place to make this work. Additionally, you need to look at how the labor model is calibrated against omnichannel. It's really interesting because there's so many dimensions when you think about omnichannel, how you need to start blending the thinking between these two worlds. A really interesting one is, how does my online behavior, my online demand, and how that's going to flow into in-store fulfillment through things like ship from store and BOPUS, how does that impact my store labor model, right? Because traditionally your store labor model is based purely on in-store traffic, right? So you've got this whole nother dimension that you need to think about when you're calibrating a labor model for an omnichannel environment, right? So that's going to be important. Incentives and KPIs, foundational, important. And again, just then a lot of tweaking of the model, refining of the how the service and engagement is supposed to work. Those are all the things that go into it. But again, it's absolutely doable.